My name is Chrissy Buteas. I'm the Chief Government Affairs Officer at NJBIA, and I'm pleased to have with me the Vice President of Government Affairs, Ray Cantor. Ray handles all of our energy and environment policy, and there has been a lot going on in this space. And through our Take on Trenton podcast today, we hope to give you a little bit of a sense of what you should need to know as our members related to some of the key policy initiatives that are being discussed by Governor Murphy and the legislature. So why don't we hop right into it, Ray?
Let's go.
Couple of key things that have been on your plate lately. One is Governor Murphy's Energy Master Plan. So the governor has a goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. He also executed an executive order last week as well that has some specific parameters in it that I think our members would be really interested in hearing more about. So can you tell us a little bit about the Energy Master Plan, some of our involvement in the process, and also the executive order?
Well, absolutely. Let me start with the Energy Master Plan. So last June, the governor, the BPU came out with a draft Energy Master Plan. And this was really the first Energy Master Plan of the state that looked at all energy sectors, not just the electric generation sector, but it was looking also at transportation and how we heat our homes as well. And it was really, in a sense, revolutionary. It called for 100% clean energy as far as electric generation is concerned, and it called for the complete electrification of both the building sector and the transportation sector. Obviously, that could have significant ramifications moving forward. There's about a 6-month process where we, other groups around the state, the BPU held a number of hearings. We participated, we sent in extensive comments, and last week they adopted a final plan. That plan, unfortunately, did not take our comments into account, and again, it basically held up the same standards they were doing before, a little bit more detail as to how we're going to get there. So again, it calls for 100% clean energy, a lot more wind, a lot more solar. It calls for the phase out of natural gas, which creates a number of problems for a number of our businesses and as a practical matter. And then, as you mentioned, the governor also the same day signed an Executive Order 100. And that executive order called for the Department of Environmental Protection to change its regulatory programs, basically its air and its land use program, to implement climate change policies, to take into account climate change impacts. The problem with that is that we don't know really what that means. It could mean very little, just elevating your homes in order to take into account potential sea level rise, but we're concerned that it can mean a heck of a lot more, and we think it's going to mean a lot more. If you're going to build anything in the state of New Jersey, the Department of Environmental Protection is going to require some permit of you, a land use permit for stormwater or for building in the coastal zone or for wetlands or for flood hazard. Their regulatory reach is extensive. And then you combine that with the air program, and they'll also talk about the solid waste program. So almost any activity you do in New Jersey as a business, touches DEP and their regulatory programs. If they impose really broad and at the moment undefined regulatory requirements, such as tell us how your permit is going to impact climate change, that analysis itself is difficult to do. It's costly, time-consuming, and uncertain. That has a chilling effect on business in and of itself. Much less the standard that they're going to come up with, which we don't know. Could be anything. They could be requiring you to have no net impact of carbon releases. They could require that you do mitigation. They could require that you put in EV charging stations or not use natural gas in your facility. So we're really concerned with where this is all going. A couple stakeholder meetings have already been called. We're meeting with the commissioner of DEP in a couple of weeks. So we're going to be very much involved because the impacts on business in New Jersey could be substantial.
Yeah, and I didn't hear a lot about the costs of doing all this, and I know that's part of the conversation that we've been driving forward with the BPU and the DEP and through our various stakeholdering is that, this is the plan, but we also want to understand better how it's going to impact our members who are the ratepayers of the state. And so I trust that as this process, as you outlined, and meetings coming up, that you'll be continuing to communicate how what is the cost of this and how will it impact our membership as you go on with those meetings?
No, absolutely. And when we commented on the EMP in this draft form and even now, we had two really central themes. One, we wanted to make sure that we had, reliable energy source. So when you turn on your lights, in the future, the lights come on, and when you go to heat your building or your home, the energy is actually there to perform those functions. But cost is essential. When their BPU was doing this process, they talked about trying to promote the least cost option. But the least cost option doesn't mean it's affordable. And we were always driving home the affordability, angle of this. We already have the ninth highest electric rates, in the nation. You add on to all the renewable requirements that are already out there in the law, and then you add on to that, what the EMP is proposing. New Jersey could be, even more unaffordable state. So we have to make sure that those energy costs stay, in line with what people can afford, both as residents and as businesses, and that, energy is reliable as well.
So I think it's fair to say that we're going to continue the conversation with the BPU and the DEP, appreciate them continuing, obviously, to meet with the business community and with BIA for you to further communicate our members' thoughts. Clearly, we're still pushing for diversification as well, not just one fuel source, but that multiple come into play, and that obviously the impact to the ratepayer should be something that should be considered during all of these conversations as well.
Absolutely. And we're having those conversations, as you said, with the BPU and with the DEP, with legislators and the administration, and with our business colleagues, as well. Everyone has concerns, and we're forming coalitions to make sure that we share information and everyone knows what's going on.
Thank you, Ray. And just for our members, if you are interested in learning more or getting more involved in Ray's advocacy efforts, our Energy and Environment Committee is a great place for you to do that. And I would encourage you to reach out to Ray directly. Our information, both of our information can be found on our website under the Advocacy tab. So, Ray, why don't I just switch gears a little bit here. Transportation and Climate Initiative, known as TCI, is a regional collaboration of 12 Northeast states to improve the transportation sector, essentially. Something you haven't heard a lot about, but I know that you're knee-deep in this policy because it, again, could impact our members. So can you give our members a little bit of an overview of why this is important and what you're doing in this space?
No, absolutely. And the Transportation Climate Initiative, TCI, really is related to all the energy proposals that are coming forth. Although New Jersey at this point has not specifically said they're going to participate in TCI, but they're still being an active member in developing it. And what TCI basically is, it's 12 member states plus the District of Columbia, and it's basically RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, a cap and trade program for transportation. They call it a cap and invest program. Basically, what it would do would be placing a cost on carbon. So distributors of gasoline and diesel fuel in New Jersey would have to pay a certain amount, to the state in order to sell, their product in the state. There's estimates depending on how far they want to reduce the amount of carbon that transportation could emit. It would be a cost between 5 and 17 cents per gallon. And the money that they raise, around $200 to $300 million per year, would then go to some projects to offset carbon from the transportation sector. There's still a lot to be that's unknown at this point in time. There's a draft, MOU that's been out there, and they're looking to have this program in place by the end of 2020. Governor Murphy, as I mentioned, has not yet committed to TCI, but he could do so at any time. And I think maybe when he does his budget address, we may get more information as to whether or not we're committing to that. But that's one of the strategies that the state might use in order to basically electrify or reduce carbon emissions from the transportation sector.
Okay.
Again, and we're keeping a very careful eye on that as well.
Okay. And again, if members have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Ray directly. A couple of key other items that have been discussed in the legislature. A lot of discussion during the last legislative session about banning plastic bags and possibly paper bags. Can you just give us a quick overview of where we are right now with the new legislative session?
Well, very quick, and let me just back up to the last legislative session. there was a bill that did not get passed by both houses. It ended up being passed by just the Senate last time, and that bill would essentially ban single-use paper and plastic bags, and it would ban, polystyrene. But again, it did not get the votes last time to pass the legislature. It was just brought up in the Senate Environment Committee. It was the first bill that Senator Bob Smith took up in his committee last week. It was the only bill he took up, in his committee last week. And that bill, essentially the same bill that was voted on, in the Senate last time, was brought up again and voted out again. The major difference this time, though, it only got 3 votes to release. The 2 Republicans on the committee abstained. And interestingly, Senator Bateman said in his comments on his abstention is that he was the 21st vote, which is the number that you need in order to get a bill out of the Senate. He said he was the 21st vote to release it last time, but now he wants a much more simple bill. He wants just a bill to ban single-use plastic bags. He wants the polystyrene and the paper out of the bill. So it's very questionable at this point in time whether or not there's enough votes to get a bag ban bill out of the legislature.
Okay, so more to follow on that piece of legislation. And then lastly, there's been some discussion about this concept of food waste. So can you give our members a little bit of an overview of what this is and how this is progressing through the legislature?
And that's very timely because just this week as well, the Assembly Environment and Solid Waste Committee took up food waste legislation. Again, this is a bill also, this bill actually made it to the governor's desk last time. The governor initially vetoed that bill, but it did not make it through again to become law. This bill would basically, it's trying to take take food waste out of the solid waste stream. So it's not going to landfills per se, but it's being recycled in one sense or another. But there are a lot of questions involved as to how big the facilities are, what's the cost going to incur. You see that cost is a common theme with all these regulatory proposals. And also there are a lot of counties that have invested tens of millions of dollars in systems on the landfills to capture methane gas that comes out from when this food waste is, decomposing, and they capture that, gas and they turn it into a usable product. And if this bill goes into law and the waste is no longer going to landfills, then those landfills will have spent tens of millions of dollars without being able to get a return on that investment. So again, a very controversial law as well. It was voted out, in committee by a 401 vote. Again, we're anticipating there will be extensive amendments moving forward, and this is just the first week of the legislature.
Well, thank you, Ray. And as Ray said, first week of the legislature for a 2-year session. So we have the governor's budget address coming up later this month. And so we'll be back to make sure that you are apprised of everything that Governor Murphy includes in his State of the Budget address. Clearly, a lot happening in the energy and environment space. We just covered 4 quick items today, but we do have ways for you to get involved with our committees. And so please feel free to contact myself or Ray. Again, our emails and phone numbers are on our website at njbia.org under the Advocacy tab. And if you have any questions or would like any topics covered, please let us know. So I guess we'll be back next time talking about the governor's budget address. So thank you for listening today.